Summit, which we look forward to have soon on the leadership level, and we will be, of course, touching all the urgent needs and long-term necessity in the institutional changes that is being proposed. So hope to have the productive meeting, and thank you once again for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Today and tomorrow, NATO defense ministers will meet here at the NATO headquarters to address a wide range of different important issues. First, on Ukraine, we will meet in the US-led contact group for Ukraine, and later today also in the NATO-Ukraine Council with the Defense Minister Umerov of Ukraine. We will address the urgent needs for more supplies of weapons, of air defense, of ammunition, and I welcome recent significant announcements by several allies, and I expect more allies to announce even more support, because there is an urgent need to provide more security assistance to Ukraine. We will also address how to ensure that we have a more robust framework, platform for our support, to ensure also that we have a long-term commitment, and therefore I expect that the NATO ministers will agree a plan for NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine, and we'll also discuss a long-term financial pledge that I expect Allied leaders will agree at the NATO summit in July. Then we will address deterrence and defense. We have agreed new ambitious defense plans. Now we have to make sure that we have the forces, the capabilities, the readiness to meet all the requirements in the defense plans. A part of that will also be, of course, to ensure that we are able to ramp up production, and the NATO ministers will address a NATO defense industry pledge to ensure that we work together to increase production across North America and Europe, across the whole alliance. Then I expect also our NATO ministers to address the Russian campaign of hostile activities against NATO allies. We have seen several examples of sabotage, of arson attempts, of cyber attacks, of disinformation, and we will also then work on NATO response options, which I expect will include increased awareness, exchange of information, intelligence, step up the protection of critical infrastructure, including undersea infrastructure and cyber, and also tighter restrictions on Russian intelligence personnel across the alliance. Then we will also meet in the nuclear planning group of the alliance, which is a regular meeting of this group. With that, I'm ready to take some questions.
Thank you. We'll start with DPA.
Hi, Stella Fenor, DPA. According to President Zelensky, he said that he needs 7 air defense systems like Patriots. How optimistic are you that you will get this together? And are you willing to convince the other countries to support that?
Since President Zelensky made that requirement, or made it clear that there is urgent need for more air defense systems, actually at the NATO defense ministerial meeting here in April, we have worked hard on that. I welcome that some allies have made already announcements and are in the process of delivering more air defense. That includes Germany, that has announced 1 extra Patriot on top of what they already delivered. Italy has announced that they will deliver a SAM-T air defense system, which is another advanced system. And we are working with other allies also to ensure that we have more allies delivering these most advanced systems. Then we have already seen that allies have delivered Patriot interceptors. We have seen that allies are delivering other types of air defense systems. So we are working hard to ensure that allies are delivering more and as urgently as possible. And I expect allies to make announcement in the coming days and weeks.
Thank you.
Yes, New York Times. Following the agreement yesterday morning with Mr. Orban, do you have any concerns that other allies may also start withholding some of their support for Ukraine in terms of military or financial aid?
No, and that's because there is broad agreement, and it has been also broad agreement across the alliance for many years, and in particular since the full-scale invasion in February, that we need to provide military support to Ukraine. Hungary has been clear since the beginning that they don't provide lethal aid, but other allies have provided in different formats, bilaterally and through the US-led contact group, lethal aid, military support to Ukraine for a long time. What we are doing now is that we are agreeing a NATO plan for security assistance and training for Ukraine to ensure a more robust framework, to ensure more predictability, and combined with a financial pledge. The whole idea is to minimize the risk for gaps and delays, as we saw earlier this year, because the gaps and delays in both the provision of military support from the United States, but also from several European allies, made a difference on the battlefield. It's one of the reasons why the Russians are now able to push and to actually occupy more land in Ukraine. And therefore Ukraine needs predictability, they need a long-term commitment, and we also need more accountability. And therefore I'm glad that when I met Prime Minister Orban yesterday, we agreed that Ukraine will not be part of this effort. They will not send Ukrainian personnel to the NATO effort to provide more security assistance and training. They will not be part of the financial pledge. But at the same time, Hungary made it clear that they will not block other allies from moving forward to agree the plan and to agree a financial pledge. And Hungary will also, of course, meet all its other NATO obligations, including by their contributions to NATO's common funding.
Has it been agreed then that the contact group will be brought under NATO coordination as opposed to the United States?
I think we need to distinguish. The contact group is a US-led effort, and the contact group has played and is playing a very important role. We meet today here. This is about the practical implementation of the delivery of security assistance and training, partly also activities which are now taking place in Wiesbaden, so that is separate from the corporate, from the contact group.
Okay, Alexander, Deutsche Welle.
Thank you very much. This is the last defense ministers meeting before the summit in DC. What would you describe then as the biggest stumbling blocks, the biggest issues that you still need to discuss on your way to a successful summit? Thank you.
The main topics at the summit will be Ukraine, it will be deterrence and defense, and it will be our partnership with the Asia-Pacific partners, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea. Of course, we have work to do on all these issues before we finalize the decisions. I expect that today and tomorrow we will agree the plan for NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine. But of course, it remains work to do on the financial pledge. My proposal is that we should agree a long-term financial pledge with a baseline of 40 billion per year. That is new fresh money every year delivered to Ukraine because they need that to be sure that they have the resources to repel the Russian aggression against their country. And by having a NATO pledge and a NATO plan, we will have more transparency, more predictability, and more accountability. And we still have some work to do on that before we have the full agreement in Washington. On deterrence and defense, this is very much about having the forces, but also ensuring that we are delivering on defense spending. I will soon publish a new report with updated figures for how many allies that are meeting the pledge to spend at least 2% of GDP on defense. I cannot go into the details now, but those numbers are good. So it reflects that the allies are taking this seriously. It will be important also as a message from the Washington summit on burden sharing, increased defense spending. And then on the Asia-Pacific partners, we are working now on concrete deliverables on how we can do more together with them, is also addressing the challenge that China poses to our security. So I don't see any particular big stumbling blocks, but there is hard work that needs to be done, as it always is before NATO summits, before we have all things in place by the summit.
Thank you. AFP, go ahead.
Good morning, sir. Olivier Beau from AFP. Sir, are you worried of the political situation in France, which could bring a government, a pro-Russia government, which might reduce its support to Ukraine and also advocate for a partial exit of France from NATO?
Well, NATO is an alliance of 32 allies, and we have elections in all these countries, and different parties, different governments are elected, and that has been part of NATO's history for 75 years. It has often happened that people ask questions whether a new government, a new majority will be loyal to NATO. At the end of the day, this is of course for the voters of each and every country to decide, but the experience is that NATO allies have always been able to stand united, and NATO allies have, regardless of, as I say, the different parties elected and the different majorities in the parliaments, we have always seen that the NATO allies have remained committed to the alliance because it is in the security interest of each and every ally to be committed. So I expect France to remain a staunch and important ally also in the future.
Okay, Army Inform Ukraine. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yuri Onищенko, news agency Army Inform Ukraine. Secretary General, media recently reported that NATO looks to create new special envoy post in Ukraine. Whether this issue will be discussed by the minister? New special envoy post in Ukraine.
No, I think, well, so NATO has a liaison office in Kiev, in Ukraine already. I met with the people working there when I visited Kiev in April. So of course we will always adapt that presence. But NATO has had we have a presence in Ukraine. We'll continue to have a presence in Ukraine, we continue to adapt the format of that civilian presence in Ukraine.
Okay, final question on the left over there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Carla Babb with Voice of America. Will Ukraine have enough pilots trained on the F-16 by the end of summer? And should those F-16s be allowed to fire across into Russian territory or Russian airspace once they have those F-16s in place?
So, NATO allies are working hard together with Ukraine to train pilots, but also to train personnel to be able to sustain technical maintenance, other types of personnel we need to ensure that we have the F-16 capability. This is more than pilots, it's about all the support staff that is needed. They are working hard to do that as soon as possible. I will be careful giving you any specific dates, but this is a huge undertaking. A lot of effort has already been put into it. There are training facilities, including in Romania. I met the Romanian president recently in Riga, where this was addressed. And rest assured, we are doing this as fast as possible. But of course, this will not be operational until it's safe and secure. Then, different allies have different types of restrictions on the use of their weapons, but I would like to. But I welcome that allies have reduced or loosened the restrictions on the use of weapons also against military targets inside Russia, because we need to understand what this is. This is a war or aggression. Russia has attacked Ukraine, and that's a blatant violation of international law. According to international law, Ukraine has the right for self-defense, and the right of self-defense includes also striking legitimate military targets on the territory of the aggressor, Russia. If they were not able to do so, then we would actually ask them to try to defend themselves, uphold the right of self-defense, with one hand tied on their back. Self-defense is not escalation. Self-defense is a right enshrined in the UN Charter, and we have the right to help Ukraine uphold the right, and by doing that, NATO allies don't become party to the conflict. And this is even more obvious now, because until now, most of the fighting has taken place deep into Ukrainian territory. But now, actually, Russia opened a new front. They opened the front in the north, in the Kharkiv, where they are attacking Kharkiv directly from Russian territory, just over the border. The border and the front line is more or less the same. And of course, if the Russian forces, the artillery, the missile batteries were safe as soon as they were on the Russian side of the border, it would become extremely difficult for the Ukrainians to defend themselves. So I will not go into every operational aspect of this, but I only say that Ukraine has the right to strike military targets on Russian territory, part of the right for self-defense, and we have the right to support them in defending themselves.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, that's,
thank you.
That's
Thank
all
you
we
so
have
much.
time for. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Over the next 2 days, the NATO defense ministers from across the alliance will gather here to prepare for the NATO summit in Washington. We will convene a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council, and allies will discuss how to ensure predictable support to Ukraine for a long haul. We come together at a critical time for Ukraine and our own security. As we have seen in recent months, delays in the provision of military aid to Ukraine have had consequences on the battlefield. But once again, allies are stepping up their support. I welcome the $60 billion package by the United States and significant commitments by other allies. In recent weeks, Sweden, Spain and Belgium have each pledged more than 1 billion euros in new support, including 30 F-16 jets and early warning airplanes. Following Germany's offer of an additional Patriot battery, Italy has pledged another SAM-T, and I expect more to be announced in the coming days and weeks. At this meeting, I expect that ministers will approve a plan for NATO to lead the coordination of security assistance and training to Ukraine. This is a key element for our package for Ukraine at the Washington summit, along with a long-term financial commitment. Since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, allies have provided 40 billion euros in military support to Ukraine each year. We must maintain this level of support as a minimum, and for as long as it takes, to hasten the conclusion in Moscow that Russia cannot wait us out. We're also looking to our own deterrence and defense, as we should. Since 2014, NATO has implemented the largest reinforcement of our collective defense in a generation. We have put in place comprehensive defense plans, the most comprehensive defense plans since the end of the Cold War. And defense spending is on an upward trajectory across the alliance. At this ministerial, we will make progress on a new defense industrial pledge for leaders to approve at the summit in Washington. This will enable us to scale up military production and send a signal of long-term demand to industry. In addition, we will take decisions to ensure that we have the capabilities to meet the requirements of our own new defense plans. Ministers will also discuss Russia's intensifying campaign of hostile acts across NATO countries, the hallmarks of which are sabotage, acts of violence, cyber attacks, and disinformation. Allies are taking decisive measures, making arrests and launching legal proceedings. Collectively, we are stepping up the protection of critical infrastructure as well as the exchange of information and intelligence. Russia's actions will not stop us from supporting Ukraine. This ministerial will also include a meeting of the Nuclear Planning Group, where allies will discuss the ongoing adaptation of nuclear capabilities to the current security environment. We have made significant progress in this adaptation. In June, the first F-35 fighter jets were declared ready by the Netherlands for NATO's nuclear mission. And the US is modernizing its nuclear weapons in Europe. As the challenges evolve, NATO's nuclear mission remains the same: to preserve peace, prevent coercion, and deter aggression. So to conclude, at this defense ministerial, we will bolster our support to Ukraine, we will strengthen our defenses, and we will send a strong message of deterrence to our adversaries. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Secretary General. We'll start with Interfax.
Yeah. Thank you, Farah. News agency Interfax Ukraine, Irina Sommer. Secretary General, we do understand that during summit in Washington, Ukraine cannot expect for the invitation and to become a member. But what alliance can offer to Ukrainians instead, especially to Ukrainians on the front line, that they will understand and to see that this is irreversible? I mean, membership. Thank you.
Well, I expect that allies will agree a comprehensive package for Ukraine. That's an agreement on NATO having a leading role in providing and coordinating military support to security assistance and training for Ukraine. This is important, partly because it helps Ukraine to address the immediate needs to defend itself, but also to ensure that NATO is there to help to build the future force, to ensure full interoperability, and therefore also help Ukraine to move towards full NATO membership. So the NATO role in coordinating and providing security assistance and training to Ukraine is both about the immediate needs to defend against Russian aggression, but also help to integrate and to make fully interoperable the Ukrainian forces. Second, I expect the financial pledge to be agreed. This is now something we are addressing here at NATO as we prepare for the upcoming summit in July, and that will also be a long-term commitment. Thirdly, I expect allies to agree strong language on membership. It's not for me to go into the details and exact wording, but I expect that language will be even clearer in our commitment that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance. Then, of course, I also expect that allies will actually make important announcements between now and the summit, and also at the summit, for more military equipment, air defense, artillery, missiles, which is urgently needed to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent nation. And without that, of course, there is no membership issue to be discussed. We need to ensure that Ukraine prevails. That's an absolute minimum for Ukraine to become a member of the alliance.
Okay, we'll go to Reuters and then Wall Street Journal.
Thank you. Secretary, you're rarely, you're rarely showcasing NATO's nuclear capabilities like you just did. What kind of message are you sending to Moscow by that?
NATO's nuclear deterrent is our ultimate security guarantee and our ultimate deterrence. And this is something which is developed over many years, the nuclear sharing arrangements, where the United States has nuclear weapons in Europe, but where allies are providing the planes, the storage, the command and control, the support to make this an effective and secure part of NATO's total deterrence and defense. What we have seen over the last years and months is a dangerous nuclear rhetoric from the Russian side. We have seen that Russia has announced that they have deployed nuclear weapons to Belarus. And we have also seen some more exercises, nuclear exercises from the Russian side. And we also have to bear in mind that we don't only face nuclear challenges from Russia, but also from China, which is now heavily modernizing their nuclear capabilities, and which we expect to have a large number of nuclear missiles, much higher than today, within a few years. And many of these missiles are, of course, intercontinental, can reach NATO territory. And then we have the nuclear program of North Korea and the efforts by Iran. So for all these reasons, we have to be able to clearly communicate that our nuclear deterrent is effective, secure, and reliable, and that's what we are making clear by modernizing, by exercising, and communicating what we do.
Thank you. Dan Michaels, Wall Street Journal. Two questions about the summit, if I may. You mentioned the defense investment pledge. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because defense contractors have wanted signed contracts so that they can increase their production. Is a pledge something that they can use to do what everyone's been discussing? And then second question, you just mentioned China. Do you expect new language about China in the summit communication? Thank you.
The pledge is, of course, an important political document where allies agree how we should work together to strengthen our defense industry. And, of course, NATO has an important and key role to play, partly to set the capability targets for what allies have to produce, partly to decide how much we're going to invest, the defense investment pledge, spending at least 2% of GDP. But NATO, of course, also play a key role when it comes to setting the standards to ensure that the weapons, the ammunition is fully interoperable and meet the NATO standards. Then it is also important for NATO to ensure that we are reducing barriers for trade and for procurement of defense material, because we need to mobilize the whole base, the strength of our defense industry. And you are right that, of course, at the end of the day, what really matters are signed contracts. We see more of those. The US has announced that they have doubled, for instance, the production of 155 millimeter ammunition, standard ammunition, from 14 to 28,000 per month, and that it will further increase to 100,000 in the near future. This is a significant increase per month, and we see similar numbers from European allies. So this reflects that we're actually doing more together, because NATO is also an important framework to ensure that we have joint procurement, that we are buying things together that will increase the scale, utilize the economy of scale, will reduce the unit cost, and the fact that allies are signing contracts together is a way to also then use the NATO as a platform to ramp up production. So we have more and more examples of defense industry scaling up production based on political decisions in NATO, in allied countries, and also that we are doing more together, and that firm contracts are signed, and the defense investment pledge is a way to ensure that we facilitate and strengthen that message.
Thank you. BBC.
Sorry, there was one more.
Okay.
Well, I will be careful going into the details or exactly what we are going to say in the communique or the declaration from the summit, but of course China is important. We see also how China is now playing a key role in upholding or propping up Russia's war in Ukraine. 90% of the microelectronics that Russia imported last year came from China, and these are items, electronic equipment, which is key to produce missiles, bombs, battle tanks, which are then used in Russia's war aggression against Ukraine. So China is propping up, China is enabling Russia to conduct its war of aggression in Ukraine or against Ukraine. And therefore, of course, what we see now very clearly in Ukraine is how our security is interlinked. What happens in Europe matters for Asia, and what happens in Asia matters for Europe, especially if you then also add on the supplies that North Korea and Iran are delivering to Russia.
Okay, we'll go to BBC Russia in the second row.
Thank you very much, Pavel Aksionov. Back to the nuclear weapons, if you please. We are talking about tactical nuclear weapons, yes, or not the strategic ones. Will there be any changes in policy about the tactical nuclear weapons? Will they be more transparent or any more visually can be seen? And is there any plans in NATO to conduct the exercises with nuclear forces? Not nuclear weapons maybe, but with forces.
Well, we are speaking about NATO's nuclear sharing arrangements, which have been well known for many, many years. There is not a new policy. This is a well-established procedure where the US has nuclear bombs deployed in Europe, and where some allies take part in what we call nuclear sharing, having planes that can deliver these weapons. We are transparent about this. It has been there for decades. We have tried and tested procedures, doctrines, and command structures. And I have actually participated, visited exercises, and been very public about those exercises. So this is not new. This is something that has been there for many, many years. Now more and more allies are also moving from F-16s to F-35s as the platform to deliver these weapons. We are very predictable, we are very transparent, but of course we are also very clear on that this is the ultimate deterrence we have. The purpose of NATO is of course not to wage war, but the purpose of NATO is to prevent war, to preserve peace, and we do that by having credible deterrence, and we have been able to prevent any armed attack against a NATO ally for 75 years. Then, as I said, we are modernizing some of these capabilities, including by also introducing now F-35s, the fifth generation aircraft, and Netherlands have declared that their planes are now operational for these tasks.
Okay, we'll take one from Thomas Fatz, and then one more after that. Yep.
Thanks a lot, Thomas Kutschka, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Secretary General, roughly 2 weeks ago, Prime Minister Orban said on Hungarian state radio, and I quote, "It is absurd that NATO, instead of protecting us, is dragging us as a member state into a world war." He also compared this to Hitler coercing then Hungary leader Horthy into World War II. Did you have a chance to discuss these remarks this morning when you met him in Budapest? And what does it mean for NATO as an alliance based on common values to have an ally making such claims?
I had a good meeting with Prime Minister Viktor Orban this morning in Budapest. We went through a long range of issues, and Orban reaffirmed that Ukraine will remain a loyal and dedicated NATO ally, adhering to all its commitments as a NATO ally, and that includes also, of course, Article 5, our collective defense clause. And I also stated clearly that NATO's purpose is peace. NATO is there to prevent war, to prevent conflict, but we do that by ensuring that we have credible deterrence, and by making sure that there is no room for miscalculation by Moscow or any other adversary about our ability to defend all allies, and by doing so we are preserving peace, preventing war. And that's the core task, and therefore we all agree on the need to ensure that NATO continues to preserve peace. I also am absolutely confident that Hungary will agree to the statements that we'll make at the NATO summit, reflecting the core values and the core purposes of NATO, including that NATO is there as a defensive alliance, protecting allies, preserving peace. Then there is one particular issue where there has been different views, and that is on the the framework for supporting Ukraine, where NATO will have a lead role in coordinating security assistance and training for Ukraine, and also the financial pledge. Viktor Orban, Prime Minister Orban, has made it clear that Hungary will not participate in these NATO efforts. I have stated that I accept that position, but I'm also glad that Prime Minister Orban and I today agreed the modalities for how Hungary should not participate in the support efforts for Ukraine, which includes that Hungary will not send personnel to these activities and not contribute to the NATO pledge, providing any lethal support for Ukraine. At the same time, Prime Minister Orban made it clear that, of course, they will adhere to all their NATO obligations and also continue to finance the NATO common budget according to the agreed cost shares. So this, and also he also agreed that Hungary will not block any decision by other NATO allies on taking on the lead of the provision of training and security assistance, and not block any decision on a financial pledge for other allies.
Okay, Washington Post at the back, please.
Thank you. Secretary General, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about this NATO support and training for Ukraine. What functions of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group will be subsumed under this new structure, and which functions will not? What will be excluded? And then relatedly, this is talked about within the alliance as Trump-proofing or future-proofing. I'm wondering if you can explain how moving these functions into NATO would prevent a withdrawal of support from a future US president or any other ally for that matter.
First, let me say that on Friday, I think we will be able to give you more details because this is a pre-ministerial conference, a press conference. I hope that we'll be able to agree the plan for NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine on Friday, and after that decision I will expect that I will be able to give you more details. What I can say today is that we now have very broad agreement in NATO, and also the fact that we have found a way to accommodate the concerns expressed by Hungary to ensure that NATO takes a leading role in the coordination of security assistance and training, and also hopefully also before the summit agree a financial pledge. One of the things we are now looking into is, for instance, what is taking place under something called SAGU, the Security Assistance Group for Ukraine, which is mainly based in Wiesbaden, which is actually a quite big organization helping to put together capability packages, different types of weapons, of ammunition, with the associated spare parts, maintenance, sustainment, and also coordinate a lot of the training. This is now led by General Cavoli in his capacity as the US commander in Europe. In the future, it will also be led by General Cavoli, but then in his capacity as the NATO commander in Europe, the SACEUR. But of course, the difference is that then will be a joint effort by NATO allies, where we also will use the NATO command structure, NATO common funding, to organize and to facilitate this. And I think this is one example of how we, by using NATO, can have a more robust, more predictable framework, and especially combined with a commitment of spending at least 40 billion euros per year. This will ensure that we have a more long-term, more predictable support for Ukraine. We welcome, of course, ad hoc voluntary contributions. They have made a huge difference. But the longer this war lasts, the more important it is that we have more predictability, more accountability, and also fairer burden sharing. And I think by ensuring NATO a bigger role in this, we can achieve this, because we have, for instance, seen that allies have made announcements, but it has not been delivered. And if we have a NATO role in ensuring more transparency and accountability, we can assume that actually more allies will deliver. We of course appreciate what the United States and other allies have done. It's unprecedented. At the same time, we saw that the United States spent 6 months agreeing a supplemental for Ukraine. We also have seen that some of the promises that European allies have made has not been delivered. And if we turn this into not voluntary contributions but NATO commitments, of course it will become more robust, it will become more reliable, and for all these reasons I believe that a stronger NATO role will help Ukraine to get the predictability it needs. Then just when that finally say that the purpose of this is to make it possible to end the war. Because the paradox, again, is that now President Putin believes that he can wait us out, and therefore the war continues. When we are able to communicate very clearly and strongly that we are prepared for long haul, for many years, then the likelihood that he will understand that he will not win on the battlefield, but have to sit down and agree a lasting peace, a just peace for Ukraine, will increase. So the longer we are ready to commit, the sooner this war can end.
Okay, we will take one final question from TV4 Sweden.
Secretary Austin, dear Lloyd, welcome once again back to NATO. It's always a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for your leadership, your personal commitment to NATO, to the transatlantic alliance, and not least for everything you have done to mobilize support for Ukraine. We met this morning in the contact group, defense contact group for Ukraine, and the support, the security assistance, the training, and everything that group has done to help Ukraine prevail has been really critical, and you have been really the man that has made this possible. So we are all extremely grateful for what you have done for NATO and for Ukraine in particular over the last few years. We will meet now in the NATO-Ukraine Council. There we will address both Ukraine's immediate needs for more support, in particular air defense and ammunition, and I welcome the agreement in the United States on the supplemental for Ukraine, but also the fact that European allies and Canada are stepping up with significant additional support to Ukraine. But we're also in the NATO-Ukraine Council and tomorrow at the Defense Ministerial meeting of NATO address how to establish an even stronger institutionalized framework to ensure the support for Ukraine for the long haul, and that includes also a financial pledge, a multi-year financial pledge to Ukraine. So there are many issues to be discussed. I look forward to sit down with you, and thank you once again for your leadership and your commitment to the alliance.
Mr. Secretary General Jens, thanks for the kind words. It's great to be back in Brussels. I should say sunny Brussels today, right? Because we had a whole day of sunshine and that's been great. But it is really good to be back. This is our last ministerial before going to the summit, which will be conducted in the United States next month. And so there's some important work to be done. And I look forward to some great discussions. I really appreciate your kind words about our colleagues there in the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. They have done magnificent work. It's been great to be a part of that. And you're right, it's some 50 countries from all over the world. And today the group got bigger because Argentina joined our ranks, as you know, which means that countries around the world continue to signal through their actions that they believe that Ukraine matters, and it was good to see them there. This alliance, NATO, is the most effective, most powerful alliance in the world, and what we've seen over the last couple of years under your watch, Jens, is NATO become more cohesive and even more effective, and it got larger on your watch. So we went from we took on 2 new countries there who were very capable countries, and that's going to make us better, make us a lot better. So look forward to conducting our first meeting with my good friend, the Minister of Defense from Sweden, and it'll be his first meeting. But it's just good to see that kind of capability come on board, Sweden and Finland. So I think it's going to be a good meeting. Looking forward to a great discussion, and thanks for having us here. Thanks for doing this again.
Thanks so much.
This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service. This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service. This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service.
New countries there were very capable countries, and that's going to make us better, make us a lot better. So look forward to conducting our first meeting with my good friend, the Minister of Defense from Sweden, and it'll be his first meeting. But it's just good to see that kind of capability come on board, Sweden and Finland. So I think it's going to be a good meeting. Looking forward to a great discussion, and thanks for having us here. Thanks for doing this again.
Thanks so much.